My story. Born into a household where there was no money as father was an active alcoholic, I vowed never to become like father. I left school with no formal qualifications and worked in the foundry. It was the foundry or the gas board or the mill. In those days there was no, do you want to be a cameraman, a makeup artist or anything. I visited my father often at the local psychiatric hospital where he would be there for 6 to 8 weeks at a time on a specialist alcohol unit. Whilst visiting, I saw male nurses drinking coffee, smoking cigs. I was coming home every night covered in muck and putting the same clothes on again to go back to the foundry. I was constantly in trouble with the police. I observed upon these visits to the hospital men with white coats sitting and talking to patients or smoking and drinking coffee. How do I get a white coat job? I took an entrance exam and to my astonishment I was offered a post of being redundant student nurse. Offered a post of being a student nurse. More importantly for me, it came with a room in the nurse's residence and getting me away from the village I lived in. By now the local constabulary had a keen interest in me and often requested that I attend a question and answer session with them. 18 and away from home, and the hospital and the social club and the Red Lion flowed with hospital staff and nurses every night. I took to Tetley's bitter like a baby takes to milk. Years later, I was to hear a man say he was born just 2 pints short. The 2 pints which made him feel equal to enable him to feel comfortable, to feel at ease. That description fitted me perfectly. I was born just 2 pints short. The journey had begun. One night I was walking up Station Road in Burley and Wharfdale. I'd had 3 or 4 pints, it wasn't enough. They used to close at 10:30. I bought a 5-pint can of Tetley's bitter. I'm walking up the road. The policeman pulls up, gets out of the car and he says, "Where do you get that beer?" And I went, "I've just bought it from the pub." He said, "Where do you live?" I said, "I live in the nurse's home." He said, "What's your job?" I said, "I'm a fucking plumber." When my head came off the wall the second time, he told me exactly who I was, and he knew that I was now in the village because the other village had told him that I was there. Within months, I had difficulty sleeping without 5 pints in me, but skirmishes, but I did qualify after 3 years, even though I drank every night. Once qualified, I did a geographical escape to Jersey, as my drinking was becoming a topic with the bosses in my training hospital. Whilst working as a staff nurse in Jersey, I met my long-suffering wife Alison, and as she knew nothing of hardened drinkers, coming as she did from a quiet family, you would have thought she might have had an inkling when the nurse's home caught fire. Not my fault, but I was drunk and seen by the fire brigade officers to be walking back into the burning inferno with a tiny extinguisher, singing David Essex, "They're Gonna Make Me a Star." Dangerous situations and being pissed are constant occupational hazards with an active alcoholic. I could have got the sack for that with the fire, but as Jersey is a population of 300,000 alcoholics clung to one rock, my luck was in. As the following week, the charge nurse was sent to Guernsey to be dried out, and the sister in charge of the ward, her husband turned up drunk to collect her from work, took the front doors off the main building by ramming them with his car at 40 miles an hour, and she never returned due to the shame, which left little old me in charge of the asylum. Despite my nightly drinking, I was good at my job, as most addicts are. Returning to the UK to get married to Alison, I got a job at Linfield Mount Psychiatric Hospital in Bradford, and still only being 24, I was promoted above older hands to become a charge nurse. Our son Andrew was born, and I was now married with a child. Looking in at us, as in so many homes, you would have thought we were a normal young family. But I was drinking daily, needing to drink before work and sometimes during work. I had become my father by the age of 24. Once again, however, my drinking was beginning to affect my work time off, and looking hungover in the morning, I would have failed a breathalyzer most early shifts. Time to move on again before anyone demoted me or took action. I was hired to commission and develop psychiatric services for Merseyside and was very good at it. However, when you pack your bag, you take yourself along with a suitcase, so there's no change. The place changes, but I didn't change, drinking and trouble. Our marriage was a constant battleground, Alison pleading with me and me promising to stop. We had numerous separations, And now when everyone asks us how long we've been married, my reply is 32 years off and on. Intermittently, I would stop for weeks, months. With the inevitable first drink, I was gone again. I tried AA, but it seemed to be based on the Book of James, the Oxford group, and adding a few Americanisms, and I was arrogant enough to decide I knew better. Over the 7 years, I was stopped 3 times for drunk driving and arrested while I had my son, who was 7 at the time, with me in the car. We were both taken to the police station from where Alison had to collect him. This is a family disease which affects everyone. Suspended from work, then dismissed, I was too ill to attend work on a regular basis. I appeared in front of the nursing board, my nursing ticket was in jeopardy, and I was put on a probationary period to allow me a chance to find some work. We had to sell our home to clear the debts. We moved to the Fylde coast, where I got a job in the care home. After 10 months off the drink, I drank again and lost my care home job and the house that went with it. Losing this house meant Alison had no choice but to return to her family in Glasgow with our 8-year-old son, where they slept on the floors of relatives before being given a flat in a very deprived sink estate in Glasgow. I was admitted to hospital with DTs and hallucinations. Word got out that I was drinking again, and I was struck off as a nurse. By this time, with my deluded arrogance, I needed no one. I could out-talk and profess to know more than the teams of psychologists and psychiatrists. I met a guy once in AOA who asked me what day it was. I said, "It's Wednesday. Why?" His reply was, "Oh, it's just that on Thursdays I have to interview my psychiatrist." Which is about right. I could have written an Egon Crabtree guide to the best food in the Northwest rehab units. Canvas of Chester twice, Fazakerley twice, Rainhill 3 times, Ormskirk, Lancaster Moor Hospital, Southport General, Blackpool Victoria Psychiatric Wing. Now in a psychiatric hospital before Christmas 1987, I have now lost my wife, my son, my job, my home. I have no money. Until, that is, the 6th of January, when the post arrived on the ward and the envelopes contained what's green and gets you drunk. Gyros. I discharged myself and went on another bender. Anybody getting tired of my benders yet? Because I was. You get tired of this. Addiction is so draining on everyone. On the 9th of January 1988, I came to in a bush shelter. I had on a crumpled suit, there was a briefcase containing half a bottle of vodka, I'd slept in a pool of urine, and there was a double-decker bus full of people staring at me in the bush shelter. I turned around to see what they were looking at. It dawned on my idle brain that it was me. I had become what everyone had predicted. I was a street drunk. I have no idea where I had been sleeping for the previous nights. I was told on one occasion the police had moved me on several times. I was a very fortunate man when the consultant psychiatrist let me stay back on the ward for 5 more days, at the end of which he threw my notes on the table and said, "David, the prognosis is nil, but then you of all people know that." I found £10 in my top pocket that day. I spent the day on my knees, crying and praying to please not let me go out and buy another bottle. They say you should never underestimate the power of prayer. I've not had a drink since that day. 9th of January 1988, I walked the streets of Blackpool with an allowance of £10 per week after my bread and breakfast was paid. I went to AA every night and was advised by the wonderful Glaswegians who ran the group that whilst I knew everything there was to know about alcoholism, I did not know how to stay sober. So this is rephrasing what they said. Sit there and shut up and open your ears. Maybe not that way. The trouble with you, Davy, is that you actually believe your own publicity. After 8 months, I moved up to join Alison and Andrew in the tenement flat in Glasgow. We lived on £60 a fortnight. I learned to speak Glaswegian as the English accent does not go down well up there. There were 2 sweetie wives waiting at the bus stop one day. They were waiting for a number 32 bus to Castlemilk. My arms folded across chest, one goes, "See, it's near the bus driver's fault, there's near 32 bus in Castlemilk. It's the English that they brought up the road to run the buses. And the great thing about Glaswegians is they always finish their sentence with going, "Isn't that right, son?" And all you have to do is go, "Aye." So for 2 years, aye. In Glasgow AA, I used to, "My name is David, I'm an alcoholic, I am not from England, I'm from Yorkshire." Seem to accept it. I stayed sober for 12 months, and as a family we fought and we got my nursing ticket back. Again, strange story. 2 psychiatrists had to interview me. One said that he felt that I was suffering from depression and this is why I drank. It's a misdiagnosis, it's a misconception. You're drinking a bloody sedative drug, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get depressed. You're living in a sink estate in Glasgow and you can't speak because they don't like the way you speak, you're going to get depressed. The other one, he used to say, take the history of people who were drinking, and he would, on his prescription pad he would write the name and address of the local AA group, because he felt that that's all that could be offered to alcoholics in Glasgow, and in my opinion he was probably right. My first job when I got my nursing ticket back was at Castle Craig, a treatment unit for drug and alcohol in Peebles. I rang the guy who owned it, and these words are what you're all about really. I said to him, I'm like 10 months, 12 months sober, I was a staff nurse, blah, blah, a charge nurse, blah, blah, blah. But I have to tell you that I'm just new off the booze. And his words were, "I'm interested in what you can do, not what you've done." Today, I'm very, very privileged in that I've been able to say those exact words to a lot of people when I've been giving out jobs. It's a tremendous reward. I worked at Peebles, and then we saw an advert in Bradford for an alcohol unit, and we came, and this is a lady who was going to open an alcohol unit in a nursing home she owned for her son. And she spoke to Alison. I was at work, and she spoke to Alison for about 2 hours on the phone, offered me a job without meeting me, without seeing me. A week later she phoned and offered Alison a job and an apartment, and we went, yeah, things like this happen. Funny, I met somebody in the lift, David, and we were talking, things like this do happen when your life's going right, opportunities arise. And so we drive there, and it's one of the finest country houses in England apparently. So we're driving in this beat up Ital car that we'd got, and up to this mansion. And this lady goes, "Hello, I'm Nina, and this is my husband, Major L." And so I then start, "Oh yes, very pleased to meet you." But I can only keep that up for about 10 minutes. We got the job, and we got the flat. This was a charity. We formed a charity, and the problem we were discussing at mealtime. The problem with the charity was, we couldn't get any funding. We couldn't get any lottery funding because we weren't taking in ethnic minority people, because they didn't have a drink problem, and we were in Gargrave, which is a nice area of Skipton, and blah, 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 blah. So we couldn't get any funding. We were doing great social work. 50% of our clients would be ladies. They would be headmistresses who would run out of money. They would be nurses. We had a nun. We've had priests, barristers, all of these people through the doors as alcoholics. So again, the misconception is that we must all start at the ground and stay there. Alcoholics are known for being able to look down on most people whilst laying in the gutter. One of the clients who got sober had a small 15-bedded care home, and he came to us and he said, "I'm retiring now because I can actually go places." He was stuck in an attic in his care home, drinking 1-2 bottles a day, but unable to go anywhere because protection of supply and drunk all the time. However, sober, he said, "You could buy this off me." And I went, "We don't have any money." And he went, "All right, I'll value the business at 100,000. You can rent the building for 20,000. I'll only charge you 13% interest, and there you go. And you can live in the attic." And of course, Alison and I discussed this, and Alison's going, because to Alison, £100,000 is real money. From where I was, we had no money, they can't lock you up. Let's do this. So we started on a 15-bedded care home. We had to moved the alcohol unit out of the nursing home because it got bought and somebody didn't want the alcohol unit there. So we went for this house in Bingley, and the banks assumed, I never told no lies, honest. The banks assumed that we had money because we had this little business, and I hit about 15 Visa cards for £2 a piece, and we had the deposit, the 30% that they needed, and they had 70%, and anyway, it went through. And at that point, the property values went up. So this house suddenly at 90,000 became worth 140,000. So I said, oh, can we borrow some more? And then this other home came up, and a banker came up from down south. And I've always thought, no offence, you know, they must be a bit soft in the head, these southerners. Anyway, he came up, listens to my gob for about an hour, and lent us 400k to buy this other home. It was run down. Now what we are good at is what we've always been good at, which is providing proper care. I believe it's the residents' homes, not ours. I just think that we administer it and everything. So we were full very quickly. Social workers filled it up. The value went up. We borrowed again. We hit another one. And at one point, I think we had 5 care homes. All on the never never, but it looked good. So we had a 30-bedded and a 40-bedded, and we finished the 10-year tenancy with the bloke who originally lent us it, and we just walked away after 10 years. So the ability to, when I was drinking, I used to watch the bank on Lord Street in Southport and wait for the bank manager to go for his dinner. Then I used to nip in and skite a cheque for about 25 quid and think I'd won the pools, although I'd have to pay it back. But the teller didn't know that the manager had barred me from drawing any more money out or whatever. So this ability to gas hadn't left me when I sobered up. So we now have 2 care homes, one caring for elderly infirm and the other is specialising in care home for the mentally ill and dementia, with a lot of ex-street drinkers who have Korsakoff dementia. And as I say, some of the people, the men there, the ladies, would be 48-year-old, 50-year-old. So it's not hard for me to cultivate any form of gratitude when I escaped that by whiskers. When I did come round again, my last bender, I really couldn't fill a form in. I had no capacity to make decisions or do anything. And I think had I continued to drink, I don't think I'd have been 6 months away from Korsakoff. Despite appearances, I still have to work at being part of things. I always felt less than and somehow detached, but over the years it's got easier. If everything you experience has a drink attached to it, and you've been doing that since you were young, then there's been no emotional maturity. I was drinking if the team won, if the team lost, if it was my birthday, if it was your birthday, if it was Friday, if it was friggin' any day, I would drink. Little wonder then that I didn't know how to cope well. I knew the words to say, but I didn't feel, because I didn't know what you're supposed to do. Just because I'm on the open up doesn't mean to say that when it rains I don't get wet. I should have got a job in a cinema, as I am the world's best projectionist. I can destroy my day, my week, my year by projecting outcomes. Let go and let God, but Father Martin says that don't let go of the steering wheel altogether or you'll crash. Many objectives and not big plans. I wanted to do this, I wanted to do this, I was going to do this, I was going to do that. Now what I've learned is I know that I need to be over there, and I don't always necessarily know how I'm going to get over there. But I know that I have to write to somebody, or I have to knock on a door, or I have to speak to somebody, and it starts that way. I used to, when I was drinking and before, I used to have big plans that never came to fruition simply because I wanted that plan today. One of the best bits of advice I've been given in AA was, David, why do you keep trying to go through brick walls? Why don't you on occasions just turn left? And it works. I will take projects right to the end, and I can't get them to go any further. And I stamp like a kid. And what I've learnt is, that's not meant to be, turn left. And another opportunity will open the door. You have to knock on 100 doors maybe to get 2 opportunities to open up for you. Being able to give success to me, being able to cultivate gratitude many times a day, being able to make eye contact with people, to sleep easy. One of my great ones is to hold a cup and saucer in a restaurant or wherever, going in Marks and Spencer's or whatever. To be able to hold a cup and saucer and not shake is, for me, massive, massive. The other thing I recognised was I couldn't do it alone. The biggest problem we have with all of it is to break through the denial system. I was myself, me, the person that could control all things. And I've learnt that I needed other people. And it's my response, when I was asked to share, and having looked at your accounts, I thought, yeah, well, that's fine. When I was asked to share, I was explaining, we have a duty to share. If you've been fortunate to come back from it, then if somebody says, will you tell your story, then I have a duty to do it. It's the first time I've ever done to this amount of people. I hope I haven't bored everybody by now. And I'll just close with what they say in AA. AA was, the third bloke to get sober in AA was actually an atheist. And AA literature, everybody associates with God grant me. And the third guy that got sober said, no, I don't believe in God. I believe you two people helped me get sober. So I want it written in bold italics. It's God as you understand him. The power of this group, the power of Emmaus, the power of somebody. Because what that does in the psychological terms is it stops you thinking that you have the power alone. It could be your friend, it could be whoever. So in closing, what I'd like to do is just read this. It's the very simple thing they say at the end of AA, which is, God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can,